The night shift at St. Matthew's Medical Center in Ohio was always quiet in a way that felt heavy rather than peaceful. The hallways glowed under dim fluorescent lights, machines hummed softly, and the smell of antiseptic hung in the air. For Emily Carter, a registered nurse in her early 30s, these nights were familiar. She had chosen nursing not just as a job but as a calling. Still, nothing in her years of training prepared her for the patient in room 417. His name was Walter Hayes, 78 years old. Terminal cancer. No visitors listed. No emergency contact. Just one line in his chart that struck Emily deeply. Patient reports no living family. Walter rarely pressed the call button. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for much. Most nights when Emily checked on him, she found him staring out the window at the distant city lights. His face calm but his eyes carrying a quiet sadness that words couldn't capture. On her third night caring for him, Emily noticed something different. Walter looked weaker, his breathing more labored. She adjusted his pillows, checked his and asked gently if he needed anything. "No," he said softly, then paused. "Actually, could you stay a minute?" Emily nodded and pulled a chair closer to his bed. In a hospital where time was always in short supply, she made the conscious decision to give him something precious, her presence. They talked that night not about illness but about life. Walter told her he had been a high school history teacher for over 30 years. He talked about the pride he felt when former students wrote to him years later, thanking him for believing in them. He spoke about his late wife, Margaret, who had passed away a decade earlier, and how the house felt unbearably quiet after she was gone. They never had children, and over time friendships faded, neighbors moved, and loneliness slowly filled the spaces love once occupied. Emily listened, truly listened, and in that simple act something shifted. Over the next few nights, she found herself lingering longer in room 417. She brought Walter warm blankets, adjusted the lights so they didn't hurt his eyes, and sometimes even snuck in an extra cup of pudding when she knew he liked it. Other nurses noticed, but no one questioned it. They could see it too, this was more than routine care. Walter began waiting for her. "I was hoping you'd be on tonight," he'd say with a small smile. And Emily, who had been feeling burned out and emotionally drained from years of hospital work, realized she was looking forward to seeing him too. But as the days passed, his condition worsened. One night, Emily walked into his room and immediately felt it. The air was different. Walter's eyes fluttered open when he heard her voice, but he seemed far away, as if already standing on the edge of another world. She sat beside him and held his hand. It was colder than before. "I don't want to be alone," he whispered. "You're not," Emily said, squeezing his hand gently. "I'm right here." Hours passed. The hospital remained quiet. Emily stayed even after her shift technically ended, asking another nurse to cover her rounds. She couldn't explain it fully. She just knew she was meant to be there. As dawn approached, Walter stirred slightly. He turned his head toward Emily, his eyes clearer for a moment than they had been in days. "Nurse," he said softly. "Yes, Walter. You were kind to me, when you didn't have to be." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. "That's my job," she replied, though her voice trembled. He shook his head slowly. "No. It was more than that." There was a long pause, his breathing shallow but steady. Then he spoke again, each word deliberate, as if he needed her to remember them. "I spent my life teaching students to believe they mattered, and somehow, I forgot to believe it about myself. You reminded me. Because of you, I didn't leave this world feeling invisible." Emily couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she held his hand tighter. His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Promise me something," he said. "Anything. Don't ever stop seeing people, even when the world is too busy to notice them." Those were his final words. Moments later, the monitor went still. Emily stayed there long after the room fell silent, her forehead resting against his hand, her heart aching in a way she had never known. She had comforted many patients before, but this was different. Walter hadn't just been a patient. He had been a mirror, showing her the true power of compassion. Weeks passed. Life at the hospital returned to its usual pace. But Emily was not the same. She started spending extra time with patients who had no visitors. She learned their stories, called them by name, and made sure no one felt forgotten. Slowly, other nurses followed her lead. Room doors stayed open longer. Conversations lasted a little more. The ward felt warmer. One afternoon, Emily was called to the hospital administration office. She was nervous, worried she might have crossed some invisible line. Instead, the director handed her a letter. It was from a former student of Walter Hayes. The student explained that Walter had once inspired him to become a teacher, and years later, after searching for his old mentor, he discovered Walter had passed away. In his will, Walter had left a small donation to the hospital's nursing staff, with a note attached. To the nurse who sat with me when I was afraid, thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. Emily held the letter with shaking hands. In that moment, she understood something profound. The smallest acts of compassion can echo far beyond a single moment, a single room, or even a single lifetime. Walter had come into her life when she was questioning her purpose, and through his final words, he gave her a renewed sense of meaning she would carry forever.